Do you have DNA from an extinct human we've never found? Yes. The short answer is yes. It's a strange thought, isn't it? It sounds like a riddle. How can you have something from a person you've never found? No bones, no tools, no fossils, nothing. Just their genetic ghost. And the weirdest part is where we found it. We found it inside of us. To make sense of this, we have to back up a little. We have to talk about what DNA is and how fragile it is. DNA is the instruction book for building a living thing. Every cell in your body has a copy. But when you die, that book starts to fall apart. The pages get torn. The ink fades. Water, heat, and microbes chew it up. For a long time, scientists thought that getting DNA from anything truly ancient was impossible. They figured it would be completely gone after a few thousand years. A fossil was just a rock shaped like a bone. The life, the organic stuff, was gone, but some scientists kept trying. A man named Svante Pääbo was obsessed with the idea. He and his team spent decades working on this problem. They were trying to do something that sounded like science fiction read the DNA of Neanderthals. Neanderthals were our closest extinct relatives. They lived in Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They were smart, they were strong, and they were very, very human. They vanished around 40,000 years ago, not long after our own ancestors, Homo sapiens, arrived in their lands. We have their bones, we have their tools, we know they existed, but we want to know more. What were they really like? How were they related to us? To answer that, you need their DNA. The problems were huge. First, the DNA they could find was in tiny shattered pieces. It wasn't a complete book. It was like a book that had been put through a paper shredder. Millions of tiny scraps. Second, it was full of contamination. When a bone sits in the ground for 50,000 years, bacteria and fungi grow all over it. Their DNA gets mixed in, so you have a shredded book mixed with shredded pages from a million other random books. And worse, there was contamination from us, modern humans. Every person who dug up the bone, handled it, or even breathed near it in the lab left their own DNA behind. A tiny flake of skin from a scientist could overwhelm the ancient signal. It was like trying to hear a whisper in a hurricane. But they figured it out. They developed new methods. They worked in clean rooms, like the ones used to build computer chips, wearing full bodysuits to avoid contaminating the samples. They used powerful computers and clever software to identify the ancient DNA fragments and filter out all the junk. And they started to piece together the shredded book, they started to read the Neanderthal genome. It was a massive achievement. For the first time, we could look directly at the genetic code of an extinct human. And that's when they decided to do something simple but brilliant. They compared the Neanderthal genome to the genomes of people alive today. The expectation was pretty straightforward. They thought they'd find that all humans are related, and Neanderthals were a separate branch that died out. A dead end. The story was supposed to be that our ancestors came out of Africa, spread across the world, and replaced everyone else, including the Neanderthals. Maybe we outcompeted them, or maybe we killed them, but we didn't mix with them. That was the story. But the DNA told a different story. When they compared the genomes, they found something shocking. People of European and Asian descent had Neanderthal DNA. About 1 to 2% of their DNA was from Neanderthals. People of purely African descent had none, or very little. The only way that could have happened is if our ancestors had children with them. Think about that for a second. This wasn't a story of replacement, it was a story of connection. When Homo sapiens left Africa and moved into the Middle East and Europe, they met the Neanderthals who already lived there. And they didn't just fight. They saw each other as people, they had families. Their children, who were part Neanderthal and part Homo sapiens, grew up and had their own children. And that Neanderthal inheritance has been passed down for thousands of generations, right to this day. It's inside a huge number of us. That little bit of Neanderthal DNA affects things like our immune system, our hair, our skin, and our ability to deal with certain diseases. It's a living piece of our ancient past, so that was the first big shock. We have DNA from an extinct relative inside us because we are their descendants in a small way. But at least we knew Neanderthals existed. We had their fossils. The next discovery was even stranger. The story starts in a place called Denisova Cave in the mountains of Siberia. It's a cold, remote place, but it's a treasure trove for archaeologists. For thousands of years, different groups of humans used it as a shelter. Archaeologists found layers of history there, with tools and bone fragments. In 2008, they found a tiny piece of a finger bone. It was from a child, maybe around 7 years old. It was so small and insignificant that they couldn't tell what kind of human it came from. It could have been a Neanderthal, since they were known to live in the area. Or it could have been one of our own ancestors. The bone was sent to Svante Pabo's lab. By this time, his team had gotten very good at this. They drilled a tiny amount of powder from the bone and went to work, trying to extract and read its DNA. They expected to find one of two things, Neanderthal or Homo sapiens. They found neither. The DNA was different. It was clearly human. It was related to us and to the Neanderthals, but it was its own thing. It belonged to a completely separate branch of the human family tree, a group we never knew existed. This was a bombshell. For the first time, scientists had identified an entirely new type of extinct human, not from a skull or a skeleton, but from a few molecules of DNA in a tiny sliver of bone. They had no idea what these people looked like. They had no idea what their culture was. All they had was their genetic code. They named them Denisovans, after the cave where the finger bone was found. And then, of course, they did the next logical thing. They compared the Denisovan genome to the genomes of modern humans, just like they did with the Neanderthals. And they got another shock. They found Denisovan DNA in people alive today. But not where they expected. It wasn't really in people from Europe or mainland Asia. The highest concentrations, up to 5 or 6%, were in people from Melanesia. That means people from places like Papua New Guinea, Australia, and the Philippines. This painted an even more complicated picture of the past. It meant that as our ancestors spread out of Africa, one group went west into Europe and met Neanderthals. Another group went east, into Asia. And somewhere in Asia, they met these mysterious Denisovans. And just like in Europe, they had children together. The descendants of these encounters then continued to spread, eventually reaching the islands of Southeast Asia and Oceania, carrying that Denisovan DNA with them. The Denisovans are a perfect answer to our question. We have their DNA, we know they existed. We know they are part of the ancestry of millions of people, and yet we've never really found them. The physical evidence is almost non-existent. Besides the finger bone, they found a couple of teeth and a piece of a jawbone in Tibet. That's it. We discovered a whole population of ancient humans almost entirely through genetics. Their primary fossil record is written in our own cells, but the story gets even deeper and stranger. This is where we get to the idea of ghost populations. After finding Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA in us, scientists got better at looking for this kind of thing. Their methods became more sophisticated. They could look at the genome of a modern person and not just spot the obvious chunks of Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA, but also look for sections that seemed weird. Sections that didn't look like they came from our direct Homo sapiens ancestors, but also didn't match any known Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA. It's like reading a book written in English. You might find a paragraph that's clearly written in French, that's the Neanderthal part, and another written in German, the Denisovan part. But what if you find a sentence that's not English, not French, and not German, but some other unknown language? You wouldn't know what the language is, but you would know it came from somewhere else. You'd know there was another author involved. That's a ghost population. It's a group of extinct humans whose existence we can infer from these strange, unexplained sections of DNA in living people, but for whom we have absolutely zero fossils. We don't have a single bone. We don't have a name for them. All we have is their genetic echo. One of the most compelling examples of this was found in Africa. Remember how the original Neanderthal study showed that people of purely African descent didn't have Neanderthal DNA? That made sense because Neanderthals lived in Eurasia, so they never would have met the Homo sapiens who stayed in Africa. For a long time, the story of ancient interbreeding was thought to be something that happened only outside of Africa. But recently, scientists started looking more closely at the genomes of African people. Using new statistical methods, they analyzed the DNA of several West African populations, like the Yoruba and Mende people. And they found these strange sections. They were long, consistent chunks of DNA that were very different from the rest of the modern human genome. They were clearly ancient. They had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The scientists checked if this DNA came from Neanderthals or Denisovans. It didn't. The relationship was a mismatch. It was something else entirely. Their computer models suggested that the ancestors of these West African populations had interbred with an unknown archaic group of humans in Africa somewhere between 40,000 and 125,000 years ago. This ghost population might have split off from our shared family tree over 600,000 years ago. They were an ancient form of human, living in Africa alongside our direct ancestors for a very long time. And we have no idea who they were. There are no fossils that we can definitively say belong to this group. There are a few strange-looking skulls from that time period in Africa that don't quite fit the classic Homo sapiens or Neanderthal model, but it's impossible to know if they are connected without getting DNA from those fossils, which is extremely difficult. So, right now, this is a human population that exists only in the data of a computer. We know they were real. We know they contributed between 2 and 19% of the DNA to the modern West Africans they studied. They are a significant part of the ancestry of millions of people, but they are, for now, ghosts. And it doesn't stop there. The deeper we look, the more ghosts we find. When scientists were studying the Denisovan genome from that cave in Siberia, they found something mind-boggling within it. The Denisovans themselves had DNA from an even older, more mysterious group. It was another ghost. This ghost was a super archaic human. The analysis suggested that this super archaic group had split off from the branch leading to us Neanderthals and Denisovans about 1 million years ago. Who could this have been? The best guess is a group like Homo erectus. Homo erectus was a very successful and widespread early human. They were the first to leave Africa and spread across Asia. They were around for over 1 million years. It's entirely possible that the Denisovans, as they moved into Asia, met and interbred with a late surviving population of Homo erectus, or a similar, very ancient human. So now the picture looks like this. A super archaic ghost human had children with the ancestors of the Denisovans. Then much later, the Denisovans had children with our Homo sapiens ancestors. And our Homo sapiens ancestors also had children with Neanderthals. And back in Africa, other Homo sapiens ancestors were having children with another ghost human we know nothing about. What does this all mean? It means the story of human evolution is not what we thought it was. For a long time, we pictured it as a simple linear progression. A line of ape-like ancestors slowly becoming more upright and more intelligent until they became us. Then we drew it as a tree with different branches splitting off and dying out like Neanderthals, leaving our own branch as the only one left. But that's not right. The real story is not a line or a tree. It's a braided stream. Or a tangled web. For most of our history, there were multiple different kinds of humans living on Earth at the same time. And they weren't living in total isolation. They were meeting, they were trading, they were fighting, and they were having families together. The lines we draw between species like Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis start to look very fuzzy. The classic definition of a species is a group of animals that can't produce fertile offspring with another group. But we clearly did. This changes how we see ourselves. Our species, Homo sapiens, isn't some pure, special lineage that was destined to rule the world. We are a hybrid, we are a mosaic. Our genomes are a patchwork quilt stitched together from the DNA of many different kinds of humans, most of whom are now extinct. We carry the legacy of the Neanderthals, who survived ice ages in Europe. We carry the legacy of the Denisovans, who adapted to life in Asia. And some of us carry the legacy of these ghost populations, these humans so ancient and mysterious we don't even have a name for them. Each of these encounters gave us new genetic tools. The DNA we inherited from these other groups wasn't just random noise. It often had a purpose. For example, some Neanderthal genes we carry are involved in fighting off viruses. It makes sense. When our ancestors moved into Europe, they would have encountered new diseases. The Neanderthals had been living there for hundreds of thousands of years and had built up genetic defenses. By interbreeding with them, our ancestors got a quick and dirty immune system upgrade. The Denisovan gene found in people living in Tibet helps them survive in high-altitude, low-oxygen environments. Their ancestors got that gene from Denisovans who were already adapted to that life. So these ancient encounters helped us survive and adapt as we spread across the planet. Our mixing with other humans wasn't a footnote in our story. It was a central part of our success. The search for these ghosts is one of the most exciting fields in science right now. Genetics is giving us a new way to do archaeology. We can now discover lost worlds and lost peoples not by digging in the dirt, but by carefully reading the stories written in our own blood and saliva. The technology is getting better all the time. Scientists can now analyze more genomes from more diverse populations around the world with greater precision. Every new genome they sequence is like opening a new history book with the chance of finding a sentence in a lost language. They are developing AI and statistical tools that are specifically designed to hunt for these ghost signals, to find the faint genetic whispers of these lost populations. What's the next step? The dream, of course, is to put a face to a ghost, to find a fossil, an ancient skull from Africa, for instance, to carefully drill into it and extract its ancient DNA, and then to see that its DNA matches the ghost DNA found in West Africans today. That would be a monumental moment. It would be like finally meeting the author of that strange sentence you found in the book. It would give a name and a physical reality to a people who have been lost to history for thousands of years, surviving only as fragments inside of us. we might also find new ghosts. There are probably more. The human family was likely even more diverse than we currently imagine. As we look at the genomes of more people from isolated and genetically distinct populations around the world, we might find more unexplained DNA, pointing to other encounters with other extinct relatives in other parts of the world. So yes, we have DNA from extinct humans we've never found. We have the genetic legacy of a West African ghost. We have a trace of a super archaic ghost that met the Denisovans, and there are probably more. These aren't just curiosities. They are a fundamental part of who we are. They prove that our past was far more complex and far more interconnected than we ever imagined. You, the person reading this, are a walking, talking fossil record. Your DNA is an archive. It contains the long, epic story of our species. It has the story of the first Homo sapiens in Africa. It has the story of the great migrations out into the rest of the world. And written in between those lines, it has the ghost stories. The faint, almost erased memories of the other humans we met along the way. The ones who are gone now, but who left a small piece of themselves behind, woven into our very code, carried silently into the future. We are their living legacy, and we are only just beginning to learn how to read their story.